Before starting this session, entitled Against Zionism and Imperialism, the move to ending impunity, implementing sanctions, as a French trade unionist, I would like to pay tribute to the dock workers of France, Italy, and Greece who refused to load the containers full of weapon spare parts on the ships heading to Israel. To pay tribute to the Union of the Employees of the Airport Platform of the Charles de Gaulle Airport of Paris, who refused to load the shipment of weapons on board an aircraft heading to Israel to fuel the war and the slaughter of the Palestinian children. We need more of this in every country, everywhere, because it demonstrates that the labor movement has the capacity to effectively implement an arms embargo when the governments fail to implement meaningful sanctions, when they do not support directly or more insidiously the continuous massacres. As the spokesperson of the Italian dock workers in Genoa in Italy said 2 days ago, we believe that mobilization on a European and international scale is the only thing that can stop the war, and that is exactly what thousands of people are doing right now as we speak, marching in the streets of our cities in Europe and worldwide. I will now hand over to the speakers, starting with Peter Eisenstein, who is Deputy Chair of the Norwegian Peace and Justice Party, Honorary President of the European Alliance in Defense of Palestinian Detainees, and a member of the Norwegian Jewish Voices for a Just Peace.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It is an honor to be on this panel and have the opportunity to speak with all of you about confronting impunity and building political action, but I'm going to do so talking about Norway. As Stéfane mentioned, I am a member of the Norwegian organization Jewish Voices for Just Peace, but we are a group that runs on consensus, and I speak for myself, not for the group. But I do speak for my political party, the Freedom and Justice Party, which is Norway's only anti-Zionist and anti-imperialist party. Zionism is a strong ideology in Norway, much stronger than the relatively few number of Jews might suggest. The total number of Jews living in Norway varies by definition. About 1,300 Norwegians identify as Jewish, but according to the Israeli citizenship law, under the law of return, that number more than doubles to about 3,000. We all know the reason why there are so few Jews in Norway. Of a pre-war population of about 2,100, fewer than half survived. Norway gave up its Jews to the Germans. Denmark, by comparison, had about 8,000 Jewish people living in Denmark at the time of the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, about 100 Danish Jews were killed. The Danes did not give up their Jews to the Germans. Today, Norway is famous for being a nation of peace. And the good news is Norway is a strong supporter of Palestine. For example, since 2002, Norway has maintained an official ban on arms exports to Israel. This is because Norway considers Israel to be an occupying power. The official trade statistics reflect this. There have been no arms exports to Israel or in the last 20 years. Last year, the Norwegian government recognized the nation-state of Palestine. In January this year, Norway hosted the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa was the guest of honor. In Norway, demonstrations in Oslo are regularly held, usually marching from the parliament, past the royal castle, through the city streets, ending up at the Israeli embassy with constant shouts of, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." In contrast to many other European nations, the police in Norway coordinate closely with us. They stop traffic so that we may march uninterrupted. This all sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Perhaps a little too good to be true. As mentioned, Norway is a country known for peace. Therefore, it might come as a surprise to some of you to learn that last year, 2024, Norway ranked number 9 in total arms sales. By comparison, Israel ranked number 8. But given Norway's size, Norway only has about 5.5 million people. Given Norway's size, Norway certainly ranks in the top 3, if not number 1, in arms sales per capita. That's no small feat for a country world-renowned for peace. But then there's the ban on arms exports to Israel. Well, most Western nations, Norway too has good lawyers, the best of whom are very adept at finding loopholes for the weapons manufacturers that they represent. So while Norway has an official ban on direct arms sales to Israel, Norwegian weapon manufacturers have no trouble at all selling massive amounts of weapons and war machinery to Israel. For example, the vaunted Israeli Air Force would not fly very far without essential parts from Norway for their jet fighter engines, the F-35, F-135, and F-136. One of these Norwegian companies, the Kongsberg Group, collaborates with the Israeli arms company Rafael on the production of Spike missiles which are used in Gaza. Then there is Nammo. Nammo is the Nordic ammunition company. Nammo's subsidiary, Nammo Tally, manufactures the M72 light anti-tank weapon, which is used extensively in Gaza. Another example is the M141 bunker defeat munition, a disposable, single-shot, shoulder-fired rocket launcher. In October 2023, nearly 2,000 of these were shipped from Nammo to Israel. Nammo is co-owned 50% by the Norwegian government, that's the Norwegian people, plus 50% by a Finnish company called Patria. But if you look at the company filings, you'll see that the Finnish company, Patria, is owned roughly 50% by the Kongsberg Group, which means that Nammo is basically 75% in Norwegian hands. But weapon sales is not the only category in which Norway punches above its weight. Raise your hand if you've heard of Norges Bank Investment Management, or NBIM, Norges Bank Investment Management. 2 people, okay, 3 people. NBIM is a standalone company within the Norwegian Reserve Bank, Norges Bank, and it is responsible for managing the government pension fund Global. You know it as the Norwegian Oil Fund. The Norwegian Oil Fund owns close to 2% of all listed stocks globally. Another thing to think about, fewer than 6 million people own 2% of the world's stocks. Luckily, for Palestinians, the oil fund follows comprehensive ethic guidelines established by the Norwegian Parliament. Companies may be excluded from the oil fund if there's an unacceptable risk that they contribute to or are responsible for serious human rights violations. The guiding principles of the fund are transparency, accountability, and ethical standards and responsible investment. The Council on Ethics is an independent body and assesses companies and makes recommendations for exclusion. Now, when it comes to the ethical standards and responsible investment, the Council is known to act swiftly to world events. So, for example, NBIM, within a week of Russia's unprovoked invasion of the Ukraine, within weeks, NBIM divested itself of all Russian stocks and assets. But Israel is different. As we speak, the Norwegian Oil Fund holds stock in more than 70 Israeli companies, including RTX, which even made the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights list of 112 companies whose activities under international law raise particular human rights concerns. Of course, the other 2 points, transparency and accountability, are also important. On March 20th of this year, the state pubcaster NRK hosted a debate focused on the Norwegian Oil Fund and its holdings in Israeli companies. Now, normally politicians fight to get onto this debate program. It's a chance for them to present their party's political policies and for them to shine as politicians. But to quote the moderator of the debate, it is remarkable that no public official from the finance department, from the Norwegian bank, no one from NBIM, no one from the oil fund, not even the oil fund chief Nicolai Tangen, would agree to participate to explain the management of our public investments. This is Norway. That is the way it is in Norway, unquote. As you might have gathered, the Ethics Council itself is a bit of a joke. It is not as if they review companies the oil fund is considering to purchase. They review companies only after the oil fund has purchased them. Excuse me. Much better. So, to quote a headline from the left-wing newspaper Klassekampen, the United Nations warned that the oil fund's stock holdings could cause Norway to contribute to crimes against humanity. Then the fund bought billions more. At present, Norway has a Labour government, and the complicity of Norway in the genocide can be seen in their actions just last week. The Norwegian parliament, led by the Labour Party, voted down a proposal to have the oil fund divest from Israeli companies. No one even bothers to talk about weapon sales anymore. To be fair, the Norwegian government is not completely passive. Just 4 days ago, last Tuesday, Norway sanctioned the Israeli ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. According to the government website, quote, "The sanctions mean that the two ministers are denied entry to Norway," unquote. That's gotta hurt, right? Be it Jews during the Nazi Holocaust or Palestinians today during this Zionist genocide, Norway proves that talk is cheap. The hard business of money over principles has rarely been seen in such stark relief as in Norway today. Now, does this make Norwegian politicians Zionists? I would argue that it does. If not in word, if not in deed, then certainly, if not in word, then certainly in deed. And words don't matter that much to the dead anyway. So when speaking about how to confront impunity and build international pressure through sanctions and political action, my suggestions are not aimed at Israel, not even at the United States, because I believe genocide changes things. Boycotts are good against apartheid, but this is genocide. Divestment and sanctions are good against everything, but this is genocide. To paraphrase the title of Haim's wonderful book, genocide is a crime like no other. Writing in 1964, the German philosopher Hans Magnus Enzensberger said, quote, "Yesterday's final solution has been accomplished. Tomorrow's final solution is still being prepared. Neither will be the work of individuals, but the work of all. Or it will not be. Without the powerless, the powerful are powerless," unquote. I believe his words were as true then, prophetic even, as they are today. Who are the powerless today? The leaders of our European nations, most if not all of whom are but lackeys to U.S. Change the microphone. Okay. Oh, thank you. So just this one on. Okay. So, who are the powerless today? The leaders of our European nations, most if not all of whom. Third time's a charm. Who are the powerless today? Apparently this microphone. The leaders of our European nations, most if not all of whom are but lackeys to US imperialism, for which Zionism is but a tool. Until now, being useful idiots of empire has not come at a price for our political and industrial leaders. Indeed, they profit from it. As we all know, the July 19th, 2024 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice obligates member states to take all measures to prevent genocide. Across the board, our leaders have failed in the duty of non-recognition, the obligation to cease aid or assistance, and the positive obligation to cooperate in ending violations. This means that our leaders' actions, and more importantly, their inaction, can be punished by the same laws that they apply to others. We cannot prevent this genocide, but we can stop it from getting worse. But what we must do is to punish the criminals who are guilty of this crime. Therefore, my suggestion for action is to follow the precept of Scottish conservationist Patrick Geddes: think globally, act locally. Today's standard where our laws do not apply to us must end. And with Palestine in mind, the entire West is guilty, and we must act as citizens. Instead of tilting at windmills, we must aim at our local leaders who commit these crimes in our name. Because unless we punish these criminals, our criminals, in each our own Western country, our leaders over whom we are meant to have democratic control, unless we punish them, then this crime will be repeated. And if we fail, thank you. But if we fail, if these criminals, our criminals, do not face justice, then we will indeed all be guilty of the next crime against humanity, which is being prepared and is sure to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will now introduce our next speaker, Professor Haim Bresheeth. He is a filmmaker and historian. His book includes the best-selling Introduction to the Holocaust and An Army Like No Other, which I warmly recommend. His films include the BBC Two State of Danger. Haim is the founder of the Jewish Network for Palestine.
Thank you for inviting me. Before I start reading my talk, I want to say something which is so obvious that it wasn't said. We've been here 2 days, and before, like in the last few months when we designed this Congress, those of us who are not from Austria, but from other countries, asked the Austrian organizers, are we going to be safe? Are we going to be allowed to speak? Are we going to be allowed to speak by the police, by the Zionists, by the local authority, by the owners of the hall? And they said to us, don't worry, we've organized it and we will be allowed to speak. Well, this is not an obvious, it's not an obvious thing. So thanks for the organizers for making it safe for all of us. My talk is The time for action is now. In 1948, almost 3 years after the creation of the United Nations, 2 apartheid states were also created. One was South Africa, the other was Israel. Both regimes have treated apartheid very differently, though. The South African government passed its apartheid legislation in the full light of global media interest, constructing a legal wall separating black from white. It was totally unapologetic about apartheid. Israel took a very different line, claiming to be a democracy. But within months of its existence, 800,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes, towns, villages, fields. This was caused by Resolution 181 in November 1947, partitioning Palestine between its indigenous population and the Zionist colon. It was most unforgivable error in the history of the UN, rash, unfair, and precipitous, giving 55% of Palestine to a third of the population who weren't born there and didn't belong there and didn't own it, causing the Nakba. After the resolution, Zionist militias stormed Tiberias, Haifa, and Jaffa, expelling Palestinians before the beginning of the war. Britain did nothing to stop it. The Palestinian population of most towns were expelled by the Zionist forces before a single Arab army moved to defend them. 2/3 of Palestine was lost before Israel was even created. Yeah, in the months between the resolution passing and the end of the mandate, 2/3 of Palestine was lost. Israel took 78% of Palestine and made 2/3 of the population into refugees. Those who managed to remain in their homes were placed under military judicial regime, which is another way of describing militarized apartheid. After the war, the UN, realizing its fatal mistake, passed Resolution 194, requiring Israel to allow all the Palestinian refugees to return. Israel, less than a year old, brazenly refused. This was the gravest defiance of the UN in its short history, and its dark shadow is still over Palestine and over all of us. Instead of applying sanctions to Israel, the UN did nothing. This remains the pattern to this day. Since then, both the United Nations General Assembly, the United Nations Human Rights Council, and the UN Security Council passed numerous resolutions on Israel-Palestine. 60% of all UN resolutions, more than all on the other topics combined. In other words, just think about it. This conflict has taken 60%, more than 60% of the UN time since 1946. Now, of all the resolutions criticizing countries, demanding remedial actions, half are about Israel. One would correctly concur that Israel is the main business of the UN since 1948. Most Palestinians are still under genocidal military rule starting then. Despite this, the UN has avoided any sanctions against Israel. While the West, led by the US, automatically vetoes Security Council resolutions against Israel, it cannot veto, there's no veto on UN General Assembly resolutions. Did you know that? These resolutions constitute international law. In 1974, the UN General Assembly voted to suspend South Africa for the crime of apartheid. It was passed by a large majority, 91 for, 22 against. Who were the 22? No mistake. Most of the West voted against, led by the US, UK, and France. South Africa was only readmitted in 1994 under President Mandela. This sanction was never used against Israel. Indeed, Israel committed every imaginable war crime, knowing it enjoys total impunity, and it was right. The West is acting against the rest, shielding, protecting, supporting, and arming Israel in whatever it does: ethnic cleansing, illegal settlement, denying rights to millions of Palestinians, combining genocide and starvation, destruction of medical, educational, and religious sites, bakeries and water facilities, and most housing, of course. Most housing in Gaza, about 90%, was already destroyed. I wrote this paper a week ago, and the numbers then of dead were over 200,000. The numbers this week, since I've written it, are between 400,000 and 500,000 of Gazans that were destroyed, that were killed. This is, we're talking about 2.3 million. A number of us use that million. Actually, there are less than 2 million people now in Gaza. South African apartheid was severe denial of human rights to millions, but it did not involve anything like what Israel is doing in Gaza. This did not start in October the 7th, but goes back decades. If suspending South Africa was necessary in 1974, how much more is Israel's removal from the UNGA justified today? Think about it. Why is this not taking place? Why is the country defying all UN resolutions immune from sanctions? It's not a simple question to answer. Why was the protection force never placed to protect Palestinians? It was placed in Lebanon. It was placed between Israel and Jordan, and Israel and Syria, and Israel and Egypt. For many decades, there were protection forces of the UN. Why were the Palestinians never protected by a UN force? Israel is also an associate member of the EU. I'm an academic, and I know that they receive billions every year from various EU research funds, and that Israel is receiving more than half of the actual members of the EU, countries that you come from. Especially, Israel is receiving more money than Norway, which we just heard about. This goes on since 2000. Israel memberships as an associate member is against the EU own rules. Those rules do not allow to appoint members to membership countries that are not, and we're not talking about genocide, we're talking about oppressive regimes, denial of rights. Genocide is not even mentioned in the regulations, because when they wrote the regulation, it was unbelievable that a country committing genocide will be a member of the EU. So, what more needs to happen for the EU to apply its own rules? We should ask, each of us living in an EU country, should ask our government, what are you bloody waiting for? What more? Israel is the only nuclear state with impunity from the Atomic Non-Proliferation Treaty. This week, we understand this very well. Free from inspection by the IAEA, while all realize that it has some 300 nuclear devices. This is illegal, but Israel is safe, knowing that nothing will happen. Why? Why is Israel, with 300 nuclear devices, is financed by the West to attack a country without any nuclear device? What is going on? Israel is also in clear violation of every international agency rules. UNRWA, UNESCO, and many others are obvious examples in the UN, yet never faced any sanctions. This allows it to break every law in the book, yet remain scot-free. Any legal system which accepts its laws defied over 8 decades without applying sanctions is totally redundant. Any legal system which allows you to do anything you want, it says you can't kill, but if you kill, nothing happens to you, is nonsense, yeah? Israel occupies more than Palestine. It occupies Western political power, all who are its partners in crime. It totally undermines international law and the UN itself, emptying it of any meaning. And to end, why is Israel doing all that? Because it can, because we allow it, because we don't do anything when it breaks the law. Because the imperialist West protects it from justice. A week into Russia's attack on Ukraine, it faced the most severe sanctions the West could apply. Why on earth is Israel immune from any legal redress? Why, when the ICC and the ICJ find against Israel on genocide, is the US allowed to sanction the courts rather than the murderers? What is the world we live in? The judges are now sanctioned by the UN, the UK, and many European countries, while the criminals are invited and financed and honored. Why are our own corrupt politicians allowing this mafia to rule our life? The answer is simple. The West allows Israeli crimes because Israel is part of the Western alliance. As long as the rest of humanity has no voice, this will continue. As long as Zionism exists, anyone's life in the Middle East is never safe. The international community has a range of sanctions it can use by joining the ongoing successful campaign of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It depends on all of us to move from the growing efficiency of boycott and divestment to international sanctions. The South African moment of Zionism has been here since the end of South African apartheid. It depends on us all, to force our governments to end this impunity. The next decade must see the end of Zionist crimes and genocide. Every trade union, every university department, every factory, medical facility, every port, and every international association of any kind must be part of the campaign to end Zionist apartheid and genocide, to end Zionism itself. Only then will Palestinians be free. Only then will Jews and others be free of Zionist occupation of their minds. Only then will the world return to the rule of law. Freedom for Palestinians means freedom from Zionist crime and aggression. Freedom for all of us. Palestine shall be free.
Thank you very much, Haim. Our next speaker will speak in German, so I invite you, for those of you who do not understand German, to take your headset. Let me introduce Tarkan. He is a social scientist, anti-colonial activist, and project manager of the international humanitarian organization Rama Austria. He has written a German book about the decolonization of Tunisia, published in 2024.
Hallo, guten Abend. Mein Vortrag Titel lautet der Angriffskrieg gegen Gaza ist zum Laboratorium der internationalen Politik geworden. Palästina ist der Schauplatz des aktuell symbolträchtigsten Kampfes für Gerechtigkeit und Befreiung in der Welt. Die palästinensische Frage ist auch das widerstandsfähigste Beispiel für die Befreiungsbewegungen der Welt, die sich im letzten Jahrhundert gegen den westlichen Kolonialismus erhoben haben, während viele Länder dabei erfolgreich waren, sich vom westlichen Kolonialismus zu befreien. Wird der Siedlerkolonialismus mit brutalsten kolonialen Methoden durch den vom Imperialismus im Nahen Osten errichteten zionistischen Staat seit einem Jahrhundert gegen die Palästinenser eingesetzt. Die Palästinenser erleben seit 100 Jahren alle Arten von Unterdrückung, die kolonialistischen Zionisten, und diese Situation scheint nur durch die Solidarität der Gemeinschaften, Bewegungen und Staaten erträglich zu sein, die in der Welt nach Freiheit streben. Der Widerstand und das Streben nach Freiheit, insbesondere in Gaza, ist eine Haltung, die alle Völker der Welt bewundern. Auch wenn viele sogenannte Experten erklären, dass die Anschläge von 7. Oktober 2023 den Palästinensern geschadet haben. Und kurzfristig scheint dies auch der Fall zu sein. Sollte man sich zunächst vergegenwärtigen, dass auch andere antikoloniale Widerstandsbewegungen in der Geschichte erst nach langen Kämpfen erfolgt waren. Algerien zum Beispiel, wo der französische Siedlerkolonialismus die Bevölkerung unterdrückte, leistete 132 Jahre lang Widerstand und erlangte schließlich seine Freiheit. Das Apartheid-Regime in Südafrika und seine Unterstützer wurde nach 45 Jahren nach einem ähnlichen langen Kampf gestürzt. Es ist deshalb durchaus möglich, dass auch der palästinensische Widerstand, wie in Algerien und Südafrika, zur Niederlage des kolonialen Zionismus führen wird. Viele Länder des globalen Südens sehen, insbesondere nach dem 7. Oktober, die Befreiung Palästinas als eine verspätete Dekolonisierung und unterstützen daher die Anerkennung Palästinas als Staat. Eines von ihnen, die Republik Südafrika, hat Israel beim Internationalen Strafgerichtshof wegen Völkermord angeklagt. Und diese Verfolgung Israels wegen Völkermord und die angedrohte Verhaftung israelischer Politiker sollte als großer Erfolg angesehen werden. Vor allem für Palästina, aber auch für Internationalismus der sogenannten Dritten Welt. Die Klage Südafrikas vor dem Internationalen Strafgerichtshof hat sich einer moralischen und prinzipiellen Sprache bedient. Fast so, als ob sie die Heuchelei des Westens entlarven könnte. Der internationale Strafgerichtshof ist ein vom Westen eingerichtetes Gericht für nicht-westliche Staatsführer und Regierungen, die dem Westen nicht gefallen. Aber nun wurde durch die Klage von einem afrikanischen Land gezeigt, dass die Zionisten und Imperialisten keine menschlichen Werte vertreten, wie sie immer vorgeben. Das Eintreten Südafrikas für die Rechte der Palästinenser hat insbesondere die zionistischen und imperialistischen Kreise schockiert. Während die Aggression Israels und die Unterstützung der westlichen imperialistischen Mächte für Israel zunimmt, wächst die Unterstützung des globalen Südens für Palästina von Tag zu Tag. Im globalen Süden wurden große Massendemonstrationen abgehalten, die nicht nur von den Regierungen initiiert, sondern von der Masse der Bevölkerung mitgetragen wurden. Etwa in Indonesien, im Jemen, auf der Marokko und viele Länder, andere auch so. Auf der anderen Seite, obwohl es im Süden Massendemonstrationen gibt, haben sich die Medien im Allgemeinen auf die Demonstrationen im Westen konzentriert, die auch ein Beweis dafür sind, dass die Völker der Länder, die Israel unterstützen, oft anders denken als ihre Regierungen. Es ist sehr wertvoll und aufregend festzustellen, dass die palästinensische Sache von Menschen in der ganzen Welt unterstützt wird, insbesondere im globalen Süden, wo permanent Solidaritätsdemonstrationen stattfinden. Kein Volk und keine Widerstandsbewegungen in der Welt hat jemals eine so große Aufmerksamkeit auf sich gezogen. Viele Länder, von den lateinamerikanischen bis zum afrikanischen Ländern, haben aufgrund der zionistischen Aggression die Beziehungen zu Israel abgebrochen und Sanktionen verhängt. Mit der Fortsetzung dieses Prozesses und der Verschärfung der Sanktionen wächst die Unterstützung der internationalen Gemeinschaft für Palästina von Tag zu Tag. Die palästinensische Frage erfährt eine unglaubliche Unterstützung, insbesondere auf der Ebene der Völker. In Umfragen, die in vielen Ländern durchgeführt wurden, erreicht die Unterstützung für Palästina in der Bevölkerung annähernd die 100%-Marke. Diese Unterstützung ist sogar unter den Völkern der westlichen Länder, die Israel mit Waffen und Materialien unterstützen, sehr hoch. In einer Umfrage, die das ZDF im Mai 2025 in Deutschland durchführte, lag der Anteil derjenigen, die Israels Angriff auf Gaza für falsch hielten, bei 80%. Trotz aller Desinformation im Westen verurteilen die Menschen die Aggression Israel. Israel verfügt zwar über eine militärische Überlegenheit in Palästina, aber die moralische Überlegenheit war immer auf Seiten Palästinas. Während die Palästinenser mit ihrer Heimat ihre Existenz verteidigen, ist Israel bestrebt, seine Grenze ohne klare Prinzipien zu erweitern. Damit hat es alle Prinzipien und Werte, die dem Westen angeblich so wichtig sind, trivialisiert insbesondere die internationalen Institutionen, die der Westen nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg zu etablieren versuchte. Die Tatsache, dass der Westen alles in den Dienst Israel gestellt hat, hat auch in der eigenen Bevölkerung ablehnende Reaktion hervorgerufen. Die rassistische zionistische Ideologie, die der Imperialismus, insbesondere die USA und die EU, mit Israel im Nahen Osten etabliert hat, ist in den Augen der Menschen offensichtlich geworden. Die Tatsache, dass die Einheit des Westens und Israels so eng miteinander verwoben ist, fordert die globale antiimperialistische Haltung. Nach der Entscheidung des Internationalen Strafgerichtshofs, die israelische Regierung nach dem Antrag Südafrikas wegen Völkermord anzuklagen, wie auch der Unterstützung durch viele internationale Menschenrechtsinstitutionen, die die Geschehnisse dokumentieren und eindeutig als Genozid deklarieren. Stellen wir fest, dass viele pro-zionistische westliche Staaten Israel nicht mehr so vorbehaltlos wie früher verteidigen. Als Zionistischen bietet die Tatsache, dass der globale Süden als moralische und globales Gewissen seine Stimme für die palästinensische Sache erhebt und auch durch die Isolierung des Zionismus und Imperialismus in der internationalen Arena. Die Möglichkeit, sie sowohl in ihrer eigenen öffentlichen Meinung als auch in der internationalen Arena zur Verantwortung zu ziehen. Deshalb sollen wir uns international vernetzen und organisieren, um Israel und seine Unterstützer, die USA und die EU, politisch, wirtschaftlich, kulturell und diplomatisch zu isolieren und mit Hilfe der internationalen Völker Sanktionen gegen sie verhängen. Um dies zu erreichen, ist es notwendig, das palästinensische Problem als Problem aller Menschen zu sehen. Nicht nur der Muslime und Araber. Und um dies zu verwirklichen, ist es erforderlich, alle einzubeziehen und zu verstehen. Wer sich nicht gegen die Geschehnisse in Palästina ausspricht, hat keine Chance, in dieser Welt selbst frei zu sein. Dankeschön.
Thank you very much, Tarkan. The next speaker is Irina Vana. Irina is a sociologist, anti-imperialist and anti-war activist of Palästina Solidarität Group in Austria. She was a candidate of List Gaza in 2024 elections and co-organizer of the Palestine Congress the same year.
Thank you, Stéfane. I was asked to speak about how to challenge the official Austrian complicity with the genocide. And I will just take up what Haim ended with. So it is obvious that Israel would not be able to commit their crimes, that they would not be able to commit genocide for a single day if the West, and in particular the US, was not to beg it and was not to want it to do it. So thinking about the complicity of Austria, this also means that as a solidarity group and as activists, as anti-imperialist activists, our duty is to go against the crimes that our governments are backing, that the crimes that our governments are committing. This is just to start off, and I will now focus, and you will be all familiar what that means, especially in Austria, and how this all developed to come to the role of the official Austria first, and then to the role that we maybe might play as part of the anti-imperialist movement to challenge the siding of our governments with the genocide and the crime that they are committing side to side with the US-led regime and with Israel. So people might think, focusing first on the official Austria, that the support of a small state like Austria for this genocide does not make much difference, because we have the US, of course. But if we remember the past of Austria, if we remember, for example, also the area of Kreisky, we know that also a very little state of Austria can make officially a difference if they only spoke up, if they raised their voice. But actually, they do not even not oppose it, yet they do the opposite. They support the genocide and go against those who oppose it. Just to remind you of some actions that were committed by our Austrian government in support of Israel, which you might all remember, or at least the Austrian audience here. Right after the 7th of October, the Austrian Chancellor hosted the Israeli flag on the Federal Chancellor and visited Netanyahu and assured him that, I quote, Austria will assist the war of Israel against terror in all time. Also, Austria then voted at least twice, I don't remember, I guess it was even 3 times, against the resolution in the UN General Assembly calling for an immediate ceasefire, sided only with the US, Israel, and some very small Asian states, as well as the Czech Republic, that always go on the side of the US. And also, payments to the unsere were immediately stopped by Austria when Israel asked for it, not even questioning if there was any evidence to it. And within Austria, this is also cited by, as we heard before, going against the resistance. And I'm not only speaking about going against the people who are on the street and against the movement, I'm also speaking of how they go against and they use like their anti-terror war for going against, for example, the main forces of the Muslim population here in Austria, and the anti-Muslim actions that they took over the years, culminating, for example, in the so-called Operation Luxor, a police operation in 2020, mainly targeting members of the Muslim community active in the pro-Palestinian solidarity. All of that didn't hold on the justice court, but still the members are traumatized of what happened to them and how the police went against them. However, Austria's connection with Israel is not only a political one. It also manifests itself in arms deals, which is a clear breach on Austria's constitutional neutrality, of which we've heard before, and places Austria officially on the side of the countries enabling this genocide. And I just want to name 2 aspects or 2 facts here. Only recently, in 2024, the Austrian armed forces bought, for example, tanks from Elbit Systems for a total value of 53 million US dollars. This represents a major gain for the Israeli arms industry, and also the Sky Shield system, which is integrating Austria into the system of the NATO. Due to Austria joining the Sky Field, is bought from Israel and is enabling Israel to commit this genocide. because it is Israel weapon systems and Israel long-range missiles that are being purchased here in Austria. It is exactly 4 billion that Austria spends, and through which the annihilation of the Palestinian people we witness today is directly co-financed by Austria. All this builds, formally seen, on the so-called strategic partnership signed in 2022 between Israel and Austria, focusing on intensifying economic ties as well as cooperation on so-called security matters. Since 2022, the economic investments from Austria in Israel have increased by 23%, as one can read on the official site of the Foreign Embassy. It was mainly the former Chancellor Kurz and the conservative right-wing parties who put all their efforts in intensifying the official relations of Austria and Israel. This also paid off for Kurz himself, as we all know. After being dismissed from the Austrian government, he founded a cybersecurity company, which is based in Tel Aviv, making a lot of money out of it. So, of course, we know it is not only about the conservative right-wing party that places Austria on the side of the Israeli genocide. Also, the Social Democratic Party of Austria is doing no better. They are, for example, responsible for the official statement of the city of Vienna, which was already released in 2018, in which the false condemn of the BDS campaign as anti-Semitic was launched, proclaiming that they should be given no space on the streets, events, and whatsoever exhibitions because they were accused of being anti-Semitic. It is for them, if it was for them, the former Chancellor Kreisky, so one of their most outstanding representatives during the Second Republic, who recognized the Palestinian resistance organizations at its time as a partner to cooperate with the PLO, and their fight for a just peace in Palestine, I guess today he would be put on trial for terrorism by its own party members. Yet, this is only the position of the official Austria. And we all know, and this Congress is part of it, that in the view of the cruel and inhuman conditions created by the Zionist state in Gaza, Israel lost a lot of its credibility, even also among some of the people in the West who formerly supported this Zionist ideology. Worldwide, and especially in the global south, as we just heard from Tarkan, billions of people are moving in solidarity with Palestine. Gaza has become a symbol of the injustice of the US-led system that for decades covered the world, and especially the Arab world, with war. In the view of the most inhuman actions we see every day happening in Palestine, the annihilation and starvation of a population, in the view of this ongoing rearmament efforts also of the European Union, of the so-called Readiness 2030 Treaty, in the view of the EU actions taken also against the refugees who are dying at the borders of Europe, and all the stories of the so-called peace union they tried to convince people of, and as they put it, a bastion of democracy and human rights, are, for a growing majority of the people, also here in Europe, no longer credible. And without its covering mask that they put on, the European Union and the US stand blank, as what they have always been, an alliance of the powerful, of the imperialist forces, military and economically directed against the people and the interests of the majority of the people in the global south, but also in their own countries. And Gaza, with all the people who joined forces against the crimes that are committing there, has also become a very strong symbol, therefore, of the growing resistance against this regime. The growing support for the Palestinian cause among the people, which we even experience here in Austria in some part, the loss of credibility for the apartheid regime and of its support for the Western countries. Sorry? Has the potential to turn against the system as such and to question the imperialist concept that they represent. To be successful in this, we have to link our struggle for the liberation of the Palestinian people to also a broader fight, to a fight for democratic rights, to a fight for social rights and self-determination against imperialism and against the capitalist globalization. So in Austria, the Liste Gaza, which we formed during the elections to make visible how this regime this imperialist regime is backed in Austria, in 2024 was one attempt to do so. And so is also the Palestinian Solidarity as an umbrella organization of a lot of different organizations supporting the Palestinian cause. And we can name a lot of other political projects, such as, for example, the idea of the reinforcement of the peace movement in Austria. Also building strong ties with the Palestinian, with the solidarity for the Palestinian people. And also, of course, the struggle of the students at the university against the complicity with Israel. We could name many others. All these actions are an attempt to build a political opposition for social justice, for peace, and for democracy. Defending also, especially in Austria, because we heard before from Peter that it is important to think globally, but also to act locally, defending Austrians' constitutional neutrality, turning it against those who are, with their support for the genocide, are breaking constantly our constitution. So we need, if we want to join forces, defend the basic democratic rights here against bans of the demonstrations and the criminalization of opposing forces. We need to go against investments in the armament and of the war, breaking up the strategic partnership, especially here in Austria, and of course also the association treaty that was mentioned by Haim before. We have to ask for investments that are important for the majority of the people instead of this ongoing weaponization, which is driving us directly into a third world war, as it seems. So we need to go also against the policy of embassy images, which we witness towards our Muslim friends especially, and to find a common social and democratic opposition, to build an alliance here in Austria, but of course also globally, in solidarity with all the people going for the right things on the street, going on the streets against the genocide, especially in the global south, and joining forces with all the global anti-imperialist forces in the world.
Thank you, Irina. I am very grateful to the speakers of this panel to have talked about actions, ending impunity, sanctions, because that is what really matters right now. Elevate the consciousness, organize, onboard as much people, organization, unions in taking concrete actions. Thanks to the organizers, our session has been extended to 6:30, so we have a bit more than 15 minutes for a Q&A session.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Today and yesterday, we saw the violent obstruction of the Gaza March in Egypt. I don't think there's any doubt that if the Arab states had stopped the oil from day one, there would have been no genocide. Do you not think the solidarity movement should start saying something about the corrupt and repressive regimes that dot the Arab Peninsula.
Thank you.
Hello, yes, Peter Eisenstein actually put his finger on it, that the ICJ has given very clear rulings about the responsibility of the West to stop the plausible genocide. And we have all the rulings of the ICC. We have the whole of international law on our side. We can go on demonstrations. We can go on the streets. But can the panel recommend what I hope will be a workshop tomorrow, a key workshop, using legal action against our own governments, against the UN for allowing the veto, against Trump, the maniac, for actually perpetrating the worst genocide. What suggestions can the panel make? And let us hope that we have this as a key workshop tomorrow, because I've been banging on about this, and I think it's the main way we can actually change and take some positive action.
Thank you.
Hallo, Irina, ich habe eine Frage. Du hast gesprochen, als hätten wir noch Reste der Neutralität in Österreich. Ich sehe dafür keine Anhaltspunkte. Vielleicht kannst du das ausführen, was du meinst, wenn du sagst, die Neutralität verteidigen. Weil wir sind längst Teil des westimperialistischen Blocks, meiner Meinung nach.
Dankeschön.
I have a question to Tarkan. He said that many countries broke down their contacts to Israel and put sanctions into action. I want to ask him if he can give some examples.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I will ask the different speakers to take those questions within 3 minutes approximately, if you can. Thank you. Who wants to start?
Wegen Sanktionen die gegen Israel, ich erinnere Südafrika natürlich angeblich, die Tunesien, Türkei und natürlich die viele arabische Länder, Jemen, wir wissen schon, aber manche afrikanische Länder, ich erinnere momentan nicht, aber 7 oder 8 Länder direkt abgebrochen, die israelische Botschafter und natürlich, wir wissen schon die Kolumbien, Irland, ja, ich erinnere jetzt 7 oder 8 Länder, aber gibt es so viele.
Ich werde, wenn es okay ist, auf Deutsch antworten. Okay. Ich glaube, ich habe mich sehr klar ausgedrückt, dass ich auch der Meinung bin, dass Österreich ein ganz wesentlicher Teil des imperialen Blocks ist und dass sie auf der Seite Israels stehen. Ich habe mehrere Beispiele davor gebracht. Nur, wir dürfen nicht vergessen, welche Bedeutung die Neutralität als Teil unserer Verfassung für einen Großteil auch der österreichischen Bevölkerung weiter hat. Und deswegen ist es ein wichtiges Instrument, das wir nicht einfach verschenken dürfen, um eine Friedensbewegung aufzubauen, um die Leute auch dafür zu erreichen, dass sie für das, was die Neutralität, wofür sie auch steht, die verfassungsmäßig garantierte Neutralität, dass das ein Vehikel ist, das als Friedensinstrument genutzt werden kann und das von unserer Regierung missbraucht wird. Das ist alles, was ich sage. Wir dürfen ihnen nicht den Spielraum lassen, zu sagen, sie betreiben aktive Neutralität, was auch immer das bedeuten mag. Wir müssen die Neutralität so reinterpretieren, wie sie eigentlich gedacht war. Nämlich, der Willi hat das ganz am Anfang schon beim letzten Panel gesagt, als ein Werkzeug, das Österreich verpflichtet, sich aus den imperialen Kriegen herauszuhalten. Und das wollen wir einfordern. Und dazu ist die Neutralität und die Forderung nach der Neutralität ein ganz wichtiges Mittel.
I just wanted to talk to Tony's question about focusing on the corrupt Arab regimes in the region. And I think this really is extremely important because that, in some respects, that's exactly what Israel is. Israel is a lightning rod for attention so that United States imperialism can take place around the whole area. So all the attention's on Israel, protected by Zionism, protected by this idea of anti-Semitism, while these corrupt... I mean, this goes back to the British custom of having an Arab facade, right? Well, this is what those Arab regimes are now. They're just an Arab facade. So it looks to the world like some Arab is running this country, when in actuality, it's to the benefit of the United States imperialism. So, but every country in the West plays a certain role, right? That's what I was on about with Norway. No, I mean, think about it. Everybody here has heard about the Oslo Agreement, right? That wonderful agreement that got the Nobel Prize and all this stuff. Well, that was just that's Norway's role, just like the Arab countries play a role. And it was interesting is that about 10 years ago, the government wanted to have do a research project on the Oslo Agreement. How wonderful it was, right? And so they commissioned a report from, I think it was PRIO, the Peace and Research Institute of Oslo, where they had one of the top researchers go in and go through all of the documents. She had access to all of the documents. I don't know if anybody's read her report. It's very short. It says all of the documents are missing. Okay? So that tells you, and then just earlier this year in January, as I talked about, Norway was responsible for the global, whatever it was called, the initiative, the two-state initiative. This is in January. This is already almost a year and a half into a genocide. Now Israel's willing to talk about a two-state solution. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all distraction. So, yeah, we should definitely talk about the role of Arab nations, which are just an extenuation of the British imperial colonialism rather than settler colonialism, which is Israel.
I'm surprised that most of the questions are about law. Of course, the law is the law. So we have to use it because we haven't got another law. We have to use our laws locally, we have to use international law, and we're doing it, and we will continue to do it. My legal friends, including Francesca Albanese, that we all admire enormously, describe international law as part of the problem than part of the solution. And they are using the law. They are using the law brilliantly, but they're not blind to its limitations. So let's talk about neutrality. Neutrality is against the law, even in Austria, when it comes to genocide, when it comes to ethnic cleansing, when it comes to starving millions of people. Neutrality is against the law because of the Genocide Convention, which is, an international law. And it doesn't allow neutrality in the face of genocide. Anybody, a person, an institution, a university, a union, and indeed a state should never be neutral in the face of genocide. It's their duty to prevent it. It's their duty to bring citizens and institutions to court. There is no neutrality in the case of Gaza. There is no neutrality of any human being, not just in Austria, in the case of Gaza. So even on legal grounds, this is total nonsense. Let's kick it out of court. The ICC and ICJ, well, I live in a country which is calling itself a democracy and probably is unique in employing a prime minister who is an international jurist. He's a human rights lawyer. I don't know any other country that is led by a human rights lawyer. What did it lead to in the case of Britain in less than a year. I already told you the Jews are already 40 or 50 times more likely to be arrested when they support Palestine. So this human rights lawyer has directed, he was once the public prosecutor. He has directed his own public prosecutor, who is actually Jewish and also an international lawyer and jurist, to arrest Jews, Palestinians, and others who support Palestine. This is against the law. This is a lawyer taking human rights from his people, yeah? So, what can we do about it? Well, what we can do about it is not just take him to court, and nobody did take him to court. What we can do is direct action. We surround Parliament with a red light. We are coming every day to Parliament, every day, to remind Parliament, this criminal organization that is running Britain, that kind of a big club of the elite, that they are actually acting against the law. We, occupy illegal factories which produce arms for Israel and send the arms for the F-35, for example, that bombed Iran. Without the British parts, the F-35 couldn't fly. So what we do is direct action. 3 times more than 1.5 million people marched in London. That's what we do. We should actually stop the companies operating by direct action. That's not to say that we don't act through the law, but it's not going to work anywhere. And lastly, about the Arab regimes. Of course, we need to speak day and night about the Arab regimes, but just remember that 14 years ago, the whole Arab East and West and North Africa was marching against their rulers, what we call the Arab Spring, and it's a bad name, they called it the Intifada. So this Intifada didn't work, okay? A lot of the people are still in jail by those bastards that run countries in the Arab East. You've heard what Ramzi has to say about them, what everyone has to say about them. But most importantly, you heard what their own population has to say about them. In the Egyptian jail, Alaa Abdel Fattah is sitting now for almost 6 years. He actually got 5 years, but they don't accept it. They still keep him. He's been on more than 100 days of hunger strike. His mother is hunger striking in London. She hunger striked for 269 days. And the doctors said that she cannot be alive. They check her, and the measurements say that she cannot be alive. She is still alive. I hope she continues to be alive. This is what people in the Arab East and South have come out into the street and said to their tyrants, we don't want you, we want democracy. They were more courageous than any other population on earth. This is what the Arabs are saying. Yes, you can put them in jail. Yes, you can kill them, like you can kill people in Gaza. It doesn't stop them. It will not stop them. This is an unfinished story. You cannot actually rule people with brutality, with total impunity. Remember where Mubarak is now today. Remember where Abu Zain is. I mean, these people will be removed, not by us, but the people of Arabia and across the Arab East. They will do the job, and we will just need to support them like the people of Palestine.